We don't have processes, but we have habits. We do build software at Hexa in general. We are a very entrepreneurial driven model. We love to have the naive, crazy people as you can. We think just nice people will attract nice people that will work for them as well. The best people that lead a studio are serial entrepreneurs. Some projects at Hexa stay for 9 months. Others have been stayed there for 18 months, trying to bring it to the world, and basically it doesn't come out there, right? And it's normal. Education is a complete virgin market for us. We learn on things not to do. We don't mind who comes with the idea. We just need to be convinced ourselves as co-founders of this opportunity that this is what we want to build.
Hi, my name is Max Polk. I'm an entrepreneur who just recorded an interview with Quentin Nickmans, one of the 3 founders of Hexa Startup Studio. For the 12 years, they created around 40 startups with total valuation of $5 billion. And out of these companies, 3 are unicorns. Inside of Hexa, there are 3 studios. eFounders for the future of work and productivity. Second studio is LogicFounders for Fintech companies. And the third is 3Founders for Web3 companies. It was very interesting to talk to Quentin. There are no processes, only rituals. Quite disruptive for all startup studios. Hi, Quentin.
Let's go.
So I would like to ask you the first question, what do you think is the most important knowledge you got through this, 12 something years of venture building and managing eFounders and Hexa? So what is the topic which might be the most interesting and most useful for other founders of studios?
I think the most important topic we all have to admit is that studios are just temporary co-founders of an opportunity. That means the most important people that will drive you to success are the co-founders you partner with. So everything around your studio should be done and should be explained so that the most brilliant founders that are willing to do it in a team entrepreneurship, right? Not everyone can suit the studio model, but those that understand that with the support of a studio, they can go faster and well. The best of these founders need to have your studio on their radar. I mean, that is the most important stuff, and to invest and overinvest a lot of time, effort, PR and whatever for your studio, just for that. All the rest comes as a natural effect, positive effect, after you have brilliant founders working on not too stupid ideas.
What is important for you in this founders? What are you looking for in the traits or the characteristics or the experience?
A bunch of stuff. First, we do build software at Hexa in general. So when you're a software entrepreneur, there is a need for me to understand the love and the ability of the person to understand product-related matters and software-related matters, right? The second trait is obviously also someone that's quite analytical. If you build out a software-based business, it's less about arts, it's less about craftsmanship, it's a lot about figures and data. So you need to have an analytical mind, and you need to be understandable about product. You don't need to be a product guy yourself, but you need to be understandable about the material you will send, which is a software piece delivered over the internet. The second trait is more on the character of the entrepreneur. We love to have the naive, crazy people, which means people that are very, very ambitious, that have big dreams, but not overly ambitious, that they don't sometimes come with their feet on the ground, that they can adapt, and that you feel it also can in closed groups or at certain moments pause and say, hey, I also have doubts and I can talk about this, right? Maybe the first class of investor of founders who are only hugely ambitious and have no feedback culture are not adapted to the studio model. And then third, we love to work with nice people. It's an 8 to 10 years long journey. You can be as brilliant as you can. We think just nice people will attract nice people that will work for them as well. So basically, if there is a click, if there's a fit with us, we think it's easier to also pair with co-founders, technical business guys, etc. And then the spinning wheel goes on.
You attract 2 entrepreneurs usually to every your venture, or not?
Yes, at least 2. Sometimes there is a setup where the technical founder don't want to be as exposed to the risk of the company. And we had some of our now 35 venture where it's like a setup of a solo entrepreneur, but it's very much the exception. We build software, so generally you need a business guy who's more the hat of sales, business, finance topics. And then on the other side, the product and tech person was able to deliver what needs to be built. And both have a very complementary usefulness into the opportunity.
Last time we talked, you said very interesting for me thing, which is don't over-intellectualize on the processes of studio. You even said something like, we don't have processes. Can you elaborate on this?
The parallel is a little bit maybe for when you think of investment firms, right? An investment firm, a venture capitalist, or another type of investor, he might say, do you have a checklist? Do you have a checklist of all you have assessed? And if everything is right, then we go to the committee. And if everyone in the committee is unanimous, then we go for the investment. Otherwise, we don't make the investment. A lot of people will tell you that the private equity and the venture capital world should work that way. We screen, we build up our memos, and then we need to have a fundamental agreement, etc. At our firm, and specifically because I think studios are much more entrepreneurial than an investment firm in general, we don't have processes, but we have habits and we have rituals, which means obviously internally we are organized when we create the company. This is all just a process, and it's automated back office workflow we need to build to remain efficient. But I don't call this really internal processes. What we prefer to do is say the best people that lead a studio are serial entrepreneurs or people that have multiple ideas they want to bring to life and they have an area of expertise. These people bring in the expertise of what the product should do, and then the studio itself has a bunch of rituals and way of working. How do you do recruitments? What are the necessary steps before you recruit? We meet on a weekly basis, and we have a bunch of meetings on a weekly basis. We just meet to give a little bit of momentum. We have a monthly demos of advancements of the product development, which is more of a ritual than a process. And then every quarter, we set ourselves all the projects against each other, saying, hey, here is what we did the last 3 months, and this is what we promise to do over the next 3 months. And it's in front of everyone. Do you call this a process? I don't think so, right? It's not that we need to do step 1, step 2, step 3. Some projects at Hexa stay for 9 months. Others have been stayed there for 18 months. That's by definition that we don't have a process which is up or go, and we invested that much, we should be at that stage. No, I think entrepreneurial ventures and business creation is craftsmanship, and craftsmanship is just about building some rituals so that you avoid doing mistakes that you could do because you've done it before.
So you have some, not steps, but rituals, habits And I just want to understand, when an entrepreneur goes into, let's say, eFounders, 3 founders, do they have some papers or some, I don't know, I want to call this processes to follow?
No, yeah, obviously, when we handshake with a founder saying, hey, we love to build this idea, and we basically fall mutually in love saying, hey, I want to build this with Hexa and we want to build it with that person, there's a kind of handshake deal. The handshake deal largely is around 3 topics. The first one, we will build this product. You don't come a Hexa and say, hey, and then the week after, finally, I want to do something else. We need to feel you are strongly committed and you will dedicate 10 years of your life, business life, to build out this venture. We need to feel that it's something very important for you, which leads to 2 other type of agreements. First, we do not create entities, etc., immediately, but we have a handshake agreement on the equity deal, which is a very simple one, with the founders. They also know what the different parties around the table are up to, which leads to success. And third, we ask for our founders to have a minimum viable salary. And it largely depends on who you are, what age you are. If you're married, you have already bought a house, you have 2 kids or 0 kids. That's just a sentiment of putting yourself a little bit at risk. Otherwise, as we don't have any rules, specifically, or processes, if you want to, or specific rules that everyone needs to receive, we have a rule saying everyone needs to be on a minimal viable salary so that they are at stake. The second type of agreement is, once they arrive, obviously they're onboarded. We don't repeat physically or humanly with every partner for hours exactly what we've built out as knowledge over 12 years. So we documented that internally in kind of knowledge-based tools. Most of our founders spend a lot of their time with the venture partner, the studio partner, which will take care and will spend most of his time over the next year with these founders, right? So they document, they can read, they understand. And then we start the ritual basis of working together, and it's learning by doing. We have our methods, and we're always open to challenge them. But we don't challenge them or change them specifically or on request because we want to improve or optimize it, just because we think we can do better. And as far as we know, we try not to reinvent the wheel every time. When something works, we'll just continue.
You decide what to build together even before you agree with the founder. Do you have something before this agreement, so that, for example, you explore some ideas together and then decide that, okay, we started to work? Or a founder goes with an idea, or you suggest your ideas to them? So how
we've done the 3 models. The base case and the most normal case is one where the venture partner at Hexa has an idea, a business topic, an area of expertise he wants to build. And that is done internally, right? That's normally core part of the studio. We have built a high conviction on the opportunity. And obviously, once the founder arrives and shares that vision, he will embed into that idea and will develop and extend it and fine tune it in a way or another, right? We learn by having the first discussions with potential clients and users, etc., etc. The second model, when someone comes with a specific idea and we partner with them, we did it in the past. It's really an exception to the rule. And the only way it can work is that we're deeply convinced, because we already have also thought about that idea in certain areas. Let's think of a European Carta. We were willing to build this, one of our ideas. And then we met an entrepreneur who was building that in Europe and said, hey, why don't we partner up? Because I'm a little bit stuck and I want to do it. And the whole agreements as founders, do you have the idea or not, doesn't change anything in our processes. The third way is then to say, we really love that founder, but he doesn't love our current idea. And we will spend some time together to identify an idea to work on. This is a scenario where we've done doing more over the last years and can work, but really depends on the mindset of the entrepreneur and us, right? If we are certain areas, like for moment climate change and stuff like that, it's a lot of deep tech topics, and we say we only want to build software. So if we identify an area where mutually we can work together and it fits in, we're happy to do it. And in the meantime, that person comes in a little bit like an entrepreneur in residence, but it's not a kicked off project. It's just some person that is intellectualizing, thinking with us around it, and it's not the default rule. The default rule is we have an idea, we have a mock-up, we have a base case and a memo explaining clearly what the business solves as a pain and how it solves as a software and how the business model should work. And that is, with that document or set of documents, we go and we discuss with founders saying who loves and shares this idea.
What is the simple system how you split equity with founders?
Between founders or the studio with...
Studio and founders, yeah.
The base case for eFounders that we share 70-30. So there's 30% post-seed. So think of it like a safe, a post, which is like a traditional way of investing now. That we earn, whatever being the investment and whatever be the level. Our implication fades off when the company raises a decent seed. So we all are together to raise at least, coming out of a studio, $1 million and a half dollars. Then we think the company can live on its own, and we fade away operationally, and the team continues to build completely independent. So we remain a shareholder, and that's it.
So you take 30% after post-seed.
Yeah.
So founders usually end up post-seed something like 50% plus.
Yeah, it's more 50% plus founders and the first equity stock option pool. Our objective is basically that they turn around 50, close to 45 or stuff like that, which seems the very good equilibrium. And what we've also seen as business angels, a type of equity at Series A. The big dilutions comes basically at Series A and sometimes Series B. And so we want to have that there at stake. If you take way too much equity as a studio upfront, well, at Series A or Series B, you will need to create stock option pools to provide back to the founder. And I think it's still a venture capital based model. So you should earn enough equity that is logical towards the economics when you have a good company. And when you know that an accelerator has like 7% for doing 2-3 months of coaching, it seems logical that a studio creating the company and working very operationally and hands-on with the company for 12 months is around 4 times that type of equity. And obviously, if it pays the bills of all the stuff. Much more. There is some, and I think in certain vertical areas, it's typically fully possible. For our vertical in the software B2B space, it seems the right equilibrium today, which basically is a little bit more than a pre-seed dilution and an accelerator, if you make the maths.
And you invest while pre-seed and then seed, or you participate or not?
So we tended in the past to also invest in the seed if we could. And then the years 2020, 2021, and even 2022 arrived. That I think when a company raises a seed, we tend not to do our pro rata, except if it's really requested or asked. But generally, we tend to not to do it. Number one, it's because we're already quite exposed to the cap table. Secondly, because the seed investors, when they come, it's generally a lead VC firm will say, okay, I put in that type of money for 10, 12, 13% of the capital. And there is still 3-4% available in this round. Then I think it's better that we have operator angels or an angel syndicate and smart investors that also join the round instead of us per se doing all our pro rata rights. It's more at the later stage when it's sometimes Series A, Series B, Series C, where there is an opportunity to continue to finance an opportunity. But I don't think it's necessary we do it at the seed.
But do you do something like pre-seed, or it is just a help of your team? So you have, I don't know, designers.
We finance 100% of the pre-seed for the 30% we offering. I mean, it's in the whole package. It's money, the work, everything included.
Can you describe like what amount of, I don't know, people in your team helps every one startup in your portfolio during this active 12 months period?
So basically everyone that is there is helping, right? There is no rule that it cannot, that someone should not help. It can be the finance person. It will help if the company wants to build out a business model and wants to know exactly our cost planning, etc. The legal person can help to understand deeply what's the shareholder agreement. If the company has some legal topics or GDPR or stuff like that, the legal people will also help on portfolio matters. Of course, everyone in the recruiting the team is fully dedicated to projects solely. It's a large team. They coach on how to efficiently recruit, etc. We have a PR and go-to-market team dedicated only for portfolio matters. We shouldn't talk about the studio. The studio lives by its successes of companies. Obviously, the venture partners are fully dedicated to projects. And obviously, as we are 3 founding partners, each of us spend some time with some portfolio companies, depending on our core muscle and our core competence, right? If I'm more a go-to-market and business case guy, they will come to me for that type of topic. Another partner will be there. It's more about recruiting, structuring, how you should do stuff on that matter. And if it's more a product and product strategy topic, it will be another type of partner. So I think if we make the maths, except some people who are much more in support and back office for some operations and office related topics. And even then, I think they help our founders a lot because they still manage an office that they don't need to do, and administrative burdens, which honestly can take a lot of time for founders they don't need to do. Almost everyone spends majority of their time on.
How big is your team of studio?
The core team is a small 20 people. And then we have studio squads team. So that means eFounders itself is a team of 3, 4, 5, depending on number of projects and stuff. LogicFounders will be 2 people, and 3 founders will be 2 people. The bigger the team, the more project basically they're on a running model building a year.
You launched more than 35 companies, 38.
Exactly.
Created 2,800 jobs. Then built 3 unicorns in your portfolio, right? So I saw this quote.
Yeah, I mean, we try to track all the data, and they're yearly updated on where it stands, knowing it's what is currently in the building, and we add obviously what has been built in the past, even if it's exited, to understand our impact on value creation.
You had 6 exits, right or not?
I think about close to, yes.
How many of those 38 companies were successful or still like work alive or exited? Like what is the percentage during these years?
I think the general rule is that we haven't faced a lot of companies that didn't succeed. It's also because some projects that are in the building, in our lab, just do not come out of the studio. So you don't need to count them, right? If it's never been invested by a third party, but it's still an investment you do yourself. And I think 4 or 5 at least projects where we spend really significant times, months, if not quarters, working down the idea, trying to bring it to the world, and basically it doesn't come out there, right? And it's normal. Out of, let's say we build in total about 40 projects, that you have at least 10% that just doesn't come out of the studio. Then they have a second batch of projects which basically attracted external capital, not always a lot, sometimes more, sometimes less. And typical seed stage companies where I think overall 3 of them didn't make it to the next step after, right? It's because they struggled too much to go to product market fit in a deep way or pivoted all over the way, which also happens, right? Whenever you're gone out and then they still pivot their way. And the rest is globally quite successfully come out of it and are seed stage funded. So ratios, I think, today are about 10% within the studio itself, maybe 10, probably in the future a little bit more, because future will tell what happens with all the Series A and other companies that raise significant amount of money, but face also troubling and turmoil times. So we don't know exactly how it will end up, but they're still valuable assets, so they more logically go to an exit, even if it's not a big exit. They don't go bust, right? Today's metrics about that 10 and 10 in percentage.
So meaning that out of about 40 companies, like only 10 were unsuccessful or something like
something like that. We should have probably between the number of projects and our current portfolio, that's about the list, yes.
And what you said about before, so before they came out and get external investments, so you said something like 4 or 5 companies.
A project, basically, because the company is not created.
Yeah. It is quite big number, I think. 80%, right? 80%.
I think it's quite logical. If you're not building too much companies, I mean, we are very, very focused, right? We're productivity software eFounders for about 10 years. So whenever we had a high conviction, I mean, it should become a project in the company. Everything can happen down, but for our core competence, it works. And now the way we are scaling is that we are trying to repeat what worked very well in productivity software and B2B SaaS, in Fintech, Web3, education, or stuff, which means education is a complete virgin market for us, right? Mm-hmm. If we have ideas on education and we do it with the right partner who knows his industry very well, we can develop probably over the next 5 years, 5 to 10 great ideas around the educational sector, like we had at least 5 or 10 great ideas when we were thinking about productivity software. Same for Fintech, same for Web3, same for climate tomorrow, right? Industry 4.0, name it. So our model, what we tried and what we are trying to achieve and are doing now since 18 months is saying it's not a studio per se that launches the ideas. It's really deep industry experts, serial entrepreneurs that have an idea they just want to launch. They don't need to build out a studio per se. We are a studio, we are an infrastructure, but we welcome people that have great knowledge in healthcare tech and saying, do you have an idea around software that you want to build in healthcare? We're open here to listen to it. We can bring you the whole infrastructure to make your idea live. And also identify brilliant co-founders you will be able to give your idea live, because most of these people will not want to embark again on a 10 to 15 years journey to execute that idea. They say, okay, I have this brilliant idea. I know from my sector it's going to work, but now how can I make it reality? And that's the model we're focusing on.
You built many B2B SaaS startups. And what is the stage when you decide to raise external capital? What is maybe in terms of revenue or some other milestones that give you this, like, okay, we are ready to raise external seed round?
We have no processes, right? So we don't have any milestones of revenues or whatever. So the short answer is whenever the team is ready, right? In experienced way, even if some of our projects have raised before or after a very short period of time, because investors and VC recognize the idea, the quality of the founders, the execution level, etc., we don't like to work less than 9 months or 12 months with the founders. Why? Because these rituals, these way of working, what needs to be shared in a way of working between the studio, founders, our rituals needs to be deeply inherited, and we want this DNA to be transmitted. So one rule is, I would say, at least work a year with the project. And second rule is we need to be able to be in a position to have a decent seed round. And generally that is after a year, it might be 1 year and a half. One needs to be triggered to do this. For some PLG-led SaaS businesses, it's lots of users and people who love it a lot, but don't specifically need to have revenues. Others or models were much more sales driven with a high ARPA. We will want to have at least, 10 paying clients, amongst which at least 2 or 3 are large companies that pay a decent amount per month or per year, so that you can have some fundamentals saying, hey, these people are paying for it. So at least an investor knows it's not something we're dreaming of, right? It's reality and it's there. The software has been built. What is not, or exceptionally not, we did it sometimes, it's when we continue to invest that it becomes a higher level of MRR. We think the best people to continue to invest at that stage is typically seed, when they start scaling out marketing and sales-driven teams.
What is the difference between these co-founders of your startups, for example, in Fintech, and also about the founders of the studio you can attract and build, like you attract also potential founders to build a studio together with you. So like what is distinguished? So what experience should have founders of the studio?
So I think for the founders of a company, that's what we described before, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's an entrepreneur. He will dedicate to an idea.
Mm-hmm.
He fully loves, and he wants to build his own company, right? It needs to be that fundamental entrepreneur. The studio founder, we also call it now more a venture partner, is someone who generally has had an entrepreneurial experience before and doesn't want specifically to embark on another venture of 12 or more years to build another company, one he successfully or not exited, right? And that person has built out an experience set that enables him to have a bunch of ideas in a vertical sector that are quite brilliant. I'll speak about Camitian. Camitian built a payments company. He sold it to a large bank. He's still serving on the board of that company. But during his building of this fintech company, he experienced lots of areas where he said, it's so painful. I could build out a solution for companies like my previous company that likes to do. So it's more a serial founder, but that doesn't want to embark on a 12 years journey and love specifically to have a large impact on the first 12 to 18 months to provide a DNA of his way of working, of how you build a successful company. And that's where he brings 80%, 90% of his value. Of course, it will continue, but it's different.
Are you an independent studio, meaning that you already had some exits and get money and you are able to support your own infrastructure? Or you still time to time raising money for the studio itself? I mean, not for the startups, because I have a model in my mind that in something like 6 years, 7 years, a studio can get independence to have some exits or which are enough to support their team and not to dilute, I don't know, a holding company of the studio. So what is your journey?
So our journey has been the one you described, right? It's been self-funded by my historical business partner, Thibaud, and myself for the first 5 to 6 years, 5 years exactly. But it's still a very much cash demanding opportunity. And we were only building 1 to 2 companies a year at that time. But you still need to pay offices, the companies that you're building, yourself in a way or another. So it's already quite cash consuming, even if you don't pay people a lot. But we had a chance to have had entrepreneurial experiences before and to catch out a little bit and to reinvest that money. In 2015 and 16, we took in some money because we wanted to scale from 1 to 2 companies to 4 or 5 companies a year. And basically to build 4 or 5 companies a year, you need to duplicate what you do as as a studio partners in quite some areas. You build on a finance team, you build on a PR team, you build on a go-to-market team, a design team, a product team, etc. And we trial and error, but it's a lot of people also to pay, and you need to pay decent salaries and provide high equity incentives to work with the best. And as we told before, the only value is to work with the best. So during that phase, even if we had exit just thereafter, we raised to have like a visibility of at least of 3 years of cash consumption and build in front of us. Obviously, when you do very large exits and you still manage to have like 3 years of runway of cash at hand, you can distribute that money to your the different investors, and then you're evergreen or you're self-fulfilling, like you were telling. Now, there are two areas where your simplistic view of saying it's enough to build come in and can challenge this a little bit. First, if you have lots of cash and our successes, you will want to continue to invest, like you said before, at Series A, Series B, Series D. These are huge amount of money, right? But it can be very interesting financially to be able to have that power to continue to invest. And secondly, you can build out a plan for 3-4 years where you build 3-4 companies a year. But if, like Hexa, you're developing a plan with scales and a number of projects we could spin out of the studio goes to 15 a year, well, you can turn around your financial model completely, right? It doesn't need to be evergreen. If you build out more than 10 companies a year, you can create side vehicles that come and pays part of the bills, right? And I think that is the area where we evolved to remain cash light consumption model and to create ad hoc specific vehicles to do the later stage investments and maybe also to deleverage financially the burden of the early stage investments phase.
What is the structure? What is your current structure? Like, I understand that you have a holding company probably for, I don't know, eFounders or for Hexa. And then also like every studio is also a holding company, not?
No, it's all in one company.
So
it's all in one company, and the studio founders, these entrepreneurs, they obviously enjoy an equity participation or an incentive on the companies they are building, right? Obviously, so there's shared incentive, and all you can imagine that everyone, if one person does a sprout out, everyone enjoys a little bit out of it. But definitely, as it is a very strongly entrepreneurial mindset, Camille will have a large equity stake in the companies he's building with the other founders, right?
Can you remember some key decision during this path or like mistakes you learned that you decided to change something in the model?
When we first started, the equity, for example, was turned around. It was more 70-30 because everyone said it makes just sense. You already give away 30% equity to co-founders who were paid and stuff. So why would you give more knowing you have the idea and you take all the risks, right? The key decision there has been to say, I think in the first 6 to 7 years, we were inventing the studio model. We were pioneering that model. And you play with a lot of stakeholders. And the key decisions we took in even huge companies now, Upfront, Aircall, even Spendesk, is to accept if people will want to change the cap table and the structure around, if these were good people and with a high reputation, we listen to them and we play the role with them in order to adapt our model that also it's fully compatible with the VC model. We have decided to create a studio model that creates companies that are independent from us. If they're independent from us, it means they need to be financed by third parties. These third parties are called VCs. They also have some rules. You cannot like them. You cannot find them justifiable, but you need to adapt to their model as well. And in the end, when you do your work correctly, it works out well.
Sometimes you are giving up equity to founders or to
in the phase 2014-16, so after 4 or 5 years, we accepted to change some topics compared to our first deal, which was turned around against today. And so much that we also took the decision to say, we will now only take 30% post-equity, right? Which was a fundamental turnaround of our model.
What do you think you are different from other studios?
No, I don't think we have unique things, and certainly not if we have no processes, but it's more rituals. I think there are two areas where at least we are different. The number one, we are a very entrepreneurial driven model, and we don't have financial LPs. All our investors are within the same firm that holds everything from the past and everything from the future, right? We like to do extremely simple stuff. We don't have complicated fund structures and agreements and stuff like that. So it's maybe not optimized always on the financial side, but at least it brings you in a way that you don't have any obligations to the investors. You're all in a full alignment of interest. And if one year we think we need to build out 15 companies because this is the major trend and this is what we need to do, and the other year zero, we have no obligation to do stuff. Whereas whenever you're a fund or another, you have an investment period and you need to report and to commit and you need to do some activity. We don't have that. We have that freedom, that flexibility to be extremely entrepreneurial compared to a financial one. And the second one is also linked to that, is that we deeply believe it's an entrepreneur that will be the best guide to build out the next company. It's when you have done it before that you have the relevancy to challenge the idea of an entrepreneur, yes or no. Not specifically because you're good at finance. It's more a deep entrepreneurial minded platform that we're building. That means that the venture partners that are launching new ideas in new verticals, we do not do more than a handshake deal. I mean, these entrepreneurs are generally well at ease to do that. I will never have that type of agreement with someone who comes from the PE world or the consultancy world or the M&A world. Say, hey, what's the deal? Where do I sign these agreement stuff? In the entrepreneurial world, you understand that the value lies in what you will build and your creativity, and therefore the handshake deal is more than enough.
You build international startups from day one, or you are focusing first on France? So just want to understand, like, all people speak English, right, in your team, but who are the first customers? Usually French companies?
It's a great question. So we do not want to serve first French companies or Belgian companies or US companies or Asian companies. What we do is we do separate two levels of discussions. The first is, where is the company incorporated? What's the deal with the founders from day one? When you build a software-based company, the biggest market for software still is today, and the most important one you can have inside is the US. The US is a huge market. Everyone speaks English. They're largely and easy adopters. So when you have a high-quality software piece and you have the opportunity to serve the American customer, we like to build American-based companies. And the deal with the founders is, even if we start in Europe, some point there will be one of the founders that probably flips over to the US and develops the market there. It's just extremely easy and rational on saying, if we have an opportunity there, at some point we will have someone living in the US, probably the CEO, because that's where the biggest market is and probably the biggest opportunity will be. If not, we are completely agnostic from where the company will be created. If it's a fintech company, for example, for lots of reasons, the fintech industry and payment industry works completely different between the US and Europe. We will say, well, the founder chooses if he wants to incorporate in Belgium, in Spain, or in France. We basically don't mind, because he will lead that company. So he or she needs to decide where that person will be most at ease with. Side note on the US one, almost none of our US-based company did not create a subsidiary in Europe immediately, because of the proximity and the easiness to create product and tech teams out of Europe compared to the US and switching over immediately. The second level is, where do we go for the first clients? And it's a little bit linked to your first question. If we have an opportunity in the US and we see we can market it in the US, because there's not a lot of dependencies on softwares you need to be integrated with, etc., then we tend to try to speak to all our friends over there, our deep network, to say, hey, do you want to try this company or this project software out there? So we can can be reassured immediately that we have an opportunity that can be worthwhile. And even if they don't continue immediately, we think it's a big value for a company to serve at least 2 countries immediately to be sure you're not serving only one.
So your companies mainly raised money in the US, right? Or not?
Not specifically raised, therefore, money in the US. They're incorporated in the US. They're therefore open to do business with US investors, but European companies as well can attract today lots of money from US investors. And European investors are very keen on investing into US-based companies as well. So no, we don't have specifically an attention to US-based investors, maybe more on the later stage, because on later stage, it's a much more mature market in the US. But on the early stage, it's more the proximity, the number of contacts you can have, and et cetera, et cetera.
Do you think that every next company is easier to build because you have, I don't know, you aggregated number of partners, corporations who are ready to test your new software, or it is always independent? So like, is there an effect when you accumulate partnerships, clients, and it is easier and easier to next founders?
I don't think so. Not the way you're describing it, but that means there is a playbook. That means it's a factory, step 1, step 2, step 3. Every project, every industry that we've built is complete other go-to-market playbooks, steps it needs to achieve to the next level. Every team of founder is different. Every strong muscle of a founder is different. You can have a founder which is very good at sales, but very bad at product. So he can start selling a lot, but then he will face some troubles in product, and vice versa exists also. So don't think there is a magical recipe. And that's where I tell you it's more about rituals. It's how can you, with the quality of the founders you identify, who are dreamers, but are very feet on the ground and head in the stars, who are analytical, who are great people. If they work on a great topic, some will need to take like 2 years before they can sign a big contract in Fintech, for example. Others will need to have like tens of thousands of users before they can start monetizing. These playbooks are completely different. The only thing which is true is that every time you learn a little bit. Me as a partner, we as a firm, we learn on things not to do or hopefully not to repeat.
And actually, I had one conversation with angel investor who said that startups created in studios are not so attractive because, like, you cannot create beautiful story that this idea came to me when I was having this problem. So I got this idea and then dedicated my life to solve it. And here it is my company. So usually, there is a idea that it's more difficult to promote startups created in studios. Do you think it is so? But you say that you don't have playbooks, so it's not a factory. It is a unique way. But what is additional value? So why going to Hexa is really like 1,000 times more likelihood of a unicorn building?
We did the maths. It's about 10,000 times more, right? Let me repeat and answer the 2 questions. First, I give you an answer for your business angel saying, I love when I meet a founder when he raises money that he's been experiencing that problem for 5 or 10 years and he's worked in that garage to find out the solution and that tada, he found it. The reality is, I think, lots of opportunities done by brilliant people out there are not that way. One of a co-founder team, which is generally 2 to 3 people, has an idea and embarks the others on the idea, which still means it's only one person that could have really deeply think through an idea and embarks 2 others with him. So that's the way we see Hexa, as just, we don't mind who comes with the idea. We just need to be convinced ourselves as co-founders of this opportunity that this is what we want to build. We don't want to be just a factory where you come, here is the idea, step two, you iterate and you make a deck, right? And often the projects we told about that didn't win through our studio process, if you want to do it, or in the end and raise seed round, it's probably because the founders so much pivoted or learned so much stuff in the industry that, and ourselves, right? We learned so much that the mission would be just so much more complicated or different that we initially thought, that we said, is it still worth doing this? And that's just it, right? But I do think deeply, no founder as an active business angel I invest in needs to express deeply. He needs to build out the passion, needs to know exactly what he's talking about. But you can learn that in a year, building out a project and an idea, as much as facing in a garage and or having a problem for 10 or 12 years. And if you had a problem for 10 or 12 years, you probably are not a fast entrepreneur enough to start building and you wait too long. That's my answer for number one. And the number two, if for answer for your business angel, your number two question was linked to...
Yeah, my number two question is, what value do you add to every new startup?
Why would I join as a founder?
And why one it is
why you say like as a founder, and what do I think we bring to the table? I think it's very complicated to have a large self-esteem or saying exactly why you are, but somewhere after 12 years, I think there is a number of stuff I know we bring to the table. The first and most important one for me is you will build with co-founders for 12 months. And people who did build software B2B companies for the last 15 years, 3 or 4 of them became unicorns. So you tend to join forces with someone that does not only provide you with some expertise, but the advice and what you can leverage out of that expertise is quite big. I think you reduce the number of errors. The second is I do think you go much faster to iterate in that idea. When you go to market, you take shortcuts because in the playbook of rituals, there's things we don't do. We're not required to be done. The third one, a little bit like why you do Harvard or some companies go to YC, you have a brand quality as a founder, as a company, we are very keen on continuing to have is that there is a stamp. If we take a project and go to seed funding, we deeply believe in it. It's too much of a burden for us to take a team of co-founders that are not doing well and bring it to the seed funding. It's only taking a lot of our time and efforts if it doesn't go well. You come for a quality stamp, you come for a very deep network of people to have your first clients, to help you introduce to journalists, to be introduced to investors. That's what I call all the brand and the quality of network you can bring to the people. And obviously the last one, but it's the most obvious one is, yes, we are product builders. So we have very good product builders. We are very good at design. We have very good ideas and leverage in go-to-market. But it's so much obvious that we do this on your sites that I tend to forget about it.
And we started with your notion that the most important thing is attracting great founders because you are not always creating and managing the company. How do you attract founders? Like what things do you do in order to attract? How you choose the best? What is the ritual?
The ritual is that everyone as senior partners that a founder would be willing to talk to needs to be available. Secondly, it's not a recruitment process. For some founders we work with, we've been knowing each other for 2-3 years. So we try to have a community of potential founders and we just regularly meet. And we regularly meet over dinner. We have some parties we throw. It's to entertain an ecosystem because a founder cannot be ready at some point. He says, I'm not completely ready, but maybe later. It's okay, very good. Our door is open. Come discuss with us. I do think it's a community effort on a local place. We do quite well. We even have a dedicated person, Faustine, who was now responsible that all the founders we have worked with in the past, but also those in the pipeline of building something with us, get regular context. And then obviously, if I do this podcast and if tomorrow I'm in a newspaper in France or in Belgium or whomever, it's only for this reason. The only reason of doing marketing is to be visible to brilliant co-founders to say, if you want to build something in the B2B space, software space, we like to do that. And we'll share all our ideas. And you will see if we match around as people, if you like to build with us. That's just it. You just try to cross the roads of brilliant entrepreneurs, and that's the way the machine works. And over time, that's the flywheel, right? The better the founders you work with, if it's not a too stupid idea, it should build out to a success. And if that is a success, you're a little bit more visible to a potential founder who also feels attracted, saying, hey, but they've proven they can do it. And that's why I say I don't put processes. I just continue the rituals. For the moment, it works.
Great. Wow. Quentin, thank you very much. So this was wonderful interview. I mean, your wonderful insights and very intriguing idea that no processes. Wow, I think it is disruptive to the studio ecosystem.
Or the other ecosystem of studios need to rethink. The first core value of a studio is to build and is a founder on the side, and not only just an operator that provides money and some resources. In the end, it's for me, the best studios I know with are led by very entrepreneurial people, high conviction people that meet up with brilliant founders because these people feel attracted to work on very ambitious projects, and they know with the studio the probability of success is just increased, and that's our destiny to continue to build that.
So I left some final questions which we maybe will not include. Maybe we'll include if you are ready to share. It is about like investment efficiency. Like, can you say something like our first investors get, I don't know how much X, if they get some distributions, or like our IRR is something like for, I don't know, some investments we made. So if you can share some statistics publicly, it would be.
Yeah, I mean, I will not do the precise maths because it's obviously a little bit more confidential. The first investors are my co-founder and myself, and obviously I need to think about IRR and whatever. But maybe to give a bandwidth, we invested a bunch of money for 5 years, so you can imagine it's not tiny, and we are still the largest shareholder of our studio as well, which is one structure. The second batch of people who joined us after 5 years, I do think they will probably, in today's valuation, in a very aggressive way, they do about 8 times their money.
You said eight times.
Yeah, eight times their money, and that's for me a liquidation price, right? It's because they really want to get out of it. And in a more normal case, we're close to 10 or 12x the money on invested capital, assuming obviously also the big unicorns and stuff we have do distribute or will exit at these valuations.
Yeah,
that brings us to an IRR of above 50%, basically. And we did an internal exercise saying, hey, if we would stop the company now and we would sell all these assets, even at today's discounted valuation of minus 45, minus 50% of some large assets, it would still return above 40% IRR. I think that's the trend now. When you look at that, I think it's a very high IRR globally, a very high ratio of unicorns and our great companies out of it. Looking forward, and as we're willing to build more companies, I do think a good venture capitalist, and that model should be sustainable and should be continue to do its work if if you achieve and your plan is clear to do 35-40% IRR. Below that, I don't think it's worth doing a studio. I think it's more interesting to go for the financial way and just do investment.
Wow.
Why do you do that?
This exercise I do on my last maybe 2 weeks I do on my every Google Meet call. So I'm a bit shocking people and a bit being a bit more memorable for this.
Yeah, well, Max, the ninja guy in Turton, you can shock always, and you can put a ninja turtle pack. You don't need to play around with these. It was great to see someone going deep into the roots. So I was happy to give back in a way or another to you. That the studio industry is a very specific one, and I hope the message has passed. That I think it's a very entrepreneurial one. It's not a financial play, but as for lots of entrepreneurs, when the idea is good, when the passion is there, and the execution is present, the outcomes can be really fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you, Quentin. Third time. Great.
Thank you, Max. See you soon.